Something incredible is happening. Across the globe, a new generation is rising. They are young, they are connected, and they are fed up. This is not a generational gap, it's a generational canyon. Young people are looking at the world they are inheriting and saying no thank you. They see corruption eating away at their futures. They see leaders prioritizing personal gain over the common good, and they are demanding better. From the streets of Nairobi to the squares of Tehran, young people are making their voices heard. This is a generation that understands the power of its voice, a generation unwilling to accept the status quo. This is a generation demanding change. Let's look at Kenya. Under President William Ruto, the situation has reached a boiling point. Young Kenyans are facing a brutal combination of overtaxation, skyrocketing living costs, and a government seemingly more interested in silencing dissent than listening to its people. But Kenyans are resilient. In 2024, massive protests forced Ruto to make concessions, scrapping a controversial finance bill and promising spending cuts. But the fight is far from over. Reports of police brutality, abductions, and enforced disappearances paint a chilling picture. The Kenyan government is facing accusations of human rights abuses. Kenyans are looking beyond their borders for help, appealing to international bodies like the ICC and the UN for intervention. Their message is clear: enough is enough. Kenya is not alone. Across the African continent, similar stories of resistance are unfolding. In Uganda, protests against government corruption were met with swift police action, sparking international condemnation. In Mozambique, a disputed election ignited outrage, fueled by anger over rampant corruption, crippling living costs, and a lack of opportunities. The government's brutal crackdown led to hundreds of deaths and a refugee crisis. Nigeria too has seen its share of unrest, with protests against economic hardship met with heavy-handed tactics, including the arrest of children on treason charges. And in Ghana, young people took to the streets ahead of the December 2024 elections, demanding solutions to the national debt crisis and soaring inflation. The winds of change are blowing far beyond Africa. In Iran, a powerful movement is challenging the very foundations of the clerical regime. Young people, joined by workers from all walks of life, have taken to the streets to denounce corruption and demand an end to exploitation. The anger is palpable. Explosions have rocked government buildings, and regime figures have seen their images defaced in acts of defiance. These brave individuals are risking everything to fight for a fairer and more just society. Their courage is an inspiration to us all. To understand the scale of this uprising, we need to understand the depth of the disillusionment. In sub-Saharan Africa, where 70% of the population is under 30, the statistics paint a bleak picture. Millions of young people are not in employment, education, or training, their potential wasted. The vast majority struggle to find decent work, and even more are deeply dissatisfied with their government's efforts to create jobs. But perhaps the most damning statistic is this: 80% of young Africans are concerned about corruption in government, the private sector, and the police. This is a generation that has lost faith in the systems that are supposed to serve them. One of the defining features of this global youth uprising is its reliance on technology. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter, have become the new battlegrounds for change. These platforms allow young activists to organize protests, share information, and bypass traditional media outlets. A hashtag can become a rallying cry, a viral video a powerful indictment of injustice. The speed and reach of digital communication have fundamentally changed the game, empowering activists and striking fear into the hearts of authoritarian regimes. The consequences of inaction are enormous. As young people become increasingly disillusioned, the potential for unrest grows. Governments that fail to address the legitimate grievances of their citizens risk facing even larger and more disruptive protests. The scenes of violence and chaos we are witnessing are a stark reminder of what happens when the social contract breaks down. Ignoring the demands of this generation is not an option. This is not just an African problem or an Iranian problem, it's a global problem. The international community has a moral obligation to stand with these young people in their fight for a better future. We need to see concrete action from world leaders, from sanctions against corrupt officials to support for independent media and civil society organizations. We need to amplify the voices of these young activists and hold their governments accountable for human rights abuses. Silence is complicity. The youth uprising is not just about protesting against corruption, it's about building a better future. It's about demanding accountability, transparency, and good governance. It's about creating a world where every young person has the opportunity to reach their full potential. This is a generation that is not afraid to challenge the status quo, to demand better from their leaders, and to fight for the future they deserve. They are the hope for a more just and equitable world. Let us stand with them. Let us amplify their voices. Let us support their struggle. The future depends on it.